Alright, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I've been going over a series of video presentations for the Rankin Technical College AWD Application and Web Development 1111.NET Framework with Web Databases class. The main book for this class is ASP.NET MVC with Entity Framework and CSS by Mr. Lee Naylor. The book has got a running example of a baby store in it, and it's well written, but I'm having some problems because of the fact that it's, in my humble opinion, it's not that well documented. So what I've decided to do is to first go over much of the material in Professional ASP.NET MVC 5 by John Galloway of Microsoft and others. So far I've gone over Chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm in Chapter 6 on data annotation and validation. Not real far into the chapter. So we're up to using validation annotations. As it says there, these are attributes you can find in the system.componentModel.DataAnnotations namespace. So in other words, you need that using statement. All right? These attributes provide server-side validation, and the framework also supports client-side validation when you use one of the attributes on a model property. We can use 4 attributes in the namespace to cover common validation scenarios. First one is required. Because you need customers to give you their first name and last name, you can decorate the first name and last name with the required attribute. Now, watch when I do this. First thing to realize here, let's stop the run. But the first thing to realize when we get in here and we start looking at this, all right, now what I'm about to show you is what I like to do. When I'm going to put in data annotations, I like to put a blank line between everything, whether I'm annotating or not. I just think that even though it spreads it out a little more, it makes it easier to read. Now, for the first name, we wanted to put in there required, and for the last name, we wanted to put in there required. Notice I'm getting errors. It's because I don't have that using statement up here. So if I take my mouse rested here, click on the light bulb, it'll say you must add using system component model.data annotations. I like to use that one because it puts it in the right place for me. All right. Again, what I just showed you, you had to put it in. You could have typed it in manually. So I just came in here, typed in the required for both of those. This attribute will raise a validation error if either property value is null or empty. Like all the built-in validation attributes, required delivers both server-side and client-side logic, although internally it is another different component in the framework that does the client side. It's not that important, all right, how it's done internally, really. With the attribute in place, try to submit the form without providing a last name, and we should see the error that is in figure 6.3. Is this 6.3? There we go. That is 6.3. So there's a bunch that we're going to put in here that are required. So the author also wants in here, so first name, last name, order date, and total. Those should all be required fields the way it looks. All right. I'm not going to worry about that right now. It'll work its way out when we get all done. There's a string length field. It says you force customers to enter their names, but what if they enter a gigantic name? All right. So we're deciding here that a first name can only be a maximum of 160 characters. Same thing for the last name. I still think that's way too long, but you know, I'm sure the author would say, well, when you write your own book, and I get it. So now we've got a string length attribute in there for both of these. And I'll tell you what, let's just do this. All right, let's just do this. Let's go back to here. Let's save and run. Now we're not done with our validation and our annotations, but I'm only going to check the first name right now. All right, and I'm going to leave it blank, and I should get errors actually in the first name and the last name. Then I'm going to go in and try to make the first name longer than 160 characters and see if that message will come up as well. All right, so here it comes. Again, in the background, I am producing the previous video, and that's slowing this down. All right, here we got it. So we're going to jump over again to order, create. Okay, we've got this big form that's going to come up. Same one that we were showing before. And you'll notice I'll make this smaller. When I click create, the order date field is required, the first name field is required, the last name field is required. You can see that. So is the total required. Those we got without having to do anything special. We'll look at those later. All right, but I'm going to come in here. In fact, let's do it here. I'm just going to come in and I'm going to grab, let me open up a new window here. And we'll use G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That's 17 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hopefully, if I did it right, that's 170 characters. So now for a username, or the first name rather, I put in more. And notice the field name must be a string with a maximum length of 160. 69, 68, 67, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And it goes away. All right. I like these because with data annotations, they're very easy to test. And, you know, the layperson even can verify that stuff is working correctly. You'll notice here, and they mention this on the bottom of page 143, we can stack these properties. If we want to, we can also, excuse me, we can also put a minimum length on here. So we can say, for example, so now the minimum length will be 3 characters. And if we're going to do it for one name, we probably should do it for the other name as well. Whoops, come on. Let's again save and run. You're going to find you're going to get a lot of this in this particular chapter. So now not only are the fields required, but they have to have a minimum length for the first name and the last name of 3. So I'll put in there for a first name, I'll put hi, and for the last name, I'll put hi. And both of those should then click in, check in. Those annotations should end up firing, for lack of, you know, however you want to word that. So again, I'm going to click this when it first comes up with nothing in there, and it should come back and it should say that the order date is required, the first name is required, the last name is required, and the total is required. 1, 2, 3, there's our fourth message down there. All right, but now if I come in, for the first name I put hi, and for the last name I put hi, you'll notice what it says. No required message now, but now it says it must have a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 160. But if I say hi, hi, boom, it's fine. If I leave it blank, the message changes. All right, hopefully at least that's fairly obvious as far as what's going on there. All right, next we want to go in and talk regular expressions. You've heard me talk regular expressions in other classes. Couple quick things about regular expressions. All right, the first, the site that I like for regular expressions is regular-expression, .info, I believe. Connection's not for that's probably not it then. Either that or it's changed. Okay. It's this one right here. I don't know why we needed the www, but it looks like, oops, we did. So there it is. Let's make this bigger so we can all see it. This is no magic website. It's just well written. And it's ugly, but that isn't the point. So www.regular-expressions.info. I think it's probably because I had HTTP instead of HTTPS. That's probably what the problem was. All right. The other thing is if you go out to HTML5pattern.com. So they give you that one also. If you want to copy these down, great. And if you don't, not a problem. So again, the other one then would be http://html5pattern.com. What's nice about that is it has kind of common things. So postal code, in other words, there's a zip code for America. That's the regular expression you'd put in. Phone number, there's a USA phone number right here. All right. Email, it's recommended that you don't use this, but there are ways, if you put this in, it should check for you. But there's a couple of other ones in here also. All right. Okay. It says to someone who isn't a developer, this error message would look terrible if you put something like that in there. If you put that pattern in and you reproduce the pattern like this. They mention ensuring that an email address is working without sending a valid email or a valid message and waiting for a response is practically impossible. So what you're doing there is you're trying to say, is it formatted in the right way? All right. Range is next, and the thing about range is range works on numbers. Okay. So with what we have here, with the example that we've been working on, I guess we don't have it up right now, but okay. So if we had, for example, total, if we had to put a total in and we wanted that total to be between $0 and $1 million, we could set up a range for that. And that's pretty much what they're showing in here. So this would be a product that would have a range of 0 through $49.99. Okay. So it had to be 0 or above, but it had to be under 50. Compare, as it says, and ensures that two properties on a model have the same value. Quite often you'll use this. They give the example of you put your email in and they ask you to confirm your email. Sure. But even more, probably more often than that, are when you put in a password and then you're asked to repeat the password. Okay. Remote, here on the middle of page 145, the ASP.NET MVC framework adds an additional remote validation attribute, which is in the system.web.mvc namespace. It enables you to perform client-side validation with a server callback. So you're telling it to prepare it on the client, but if for some reason it doesn't work, all right. I'll let you read that yourselves. I'll tell you what, let's go just through this part right here, which is pages 146 and the top of page 147. And then we will end this particular part of the lesson and come back for the looking behind the annotation curtain. It says here, every validation attribute allows you to pass in a name parameter with a custom error message. All right, so I'm going to grab everything that they have right here, this entire thing, and put that above the email. Copy. And we're going to find the email in here. There it is. We're going to add this. Oops, still running. Stop the run. Enter and paste that in. All right. So if we don't follow this pattern, instead of having that in our error message, the error message will say email doesn't look like a valid email address. For instance, I don't know why I do this, but if I wanted to, okay, I don't know if it's required, but we'll try it here. Error message equal, you must provide a first name. It doesn't look like it likes it right there. So let's remove that. It's under the length, so it'd be here. Okay. You must provide a first name greater than or equal to 3 and less than or equal to 160 characters. Long message, but you get the idea taking a look at that. And I'll grab that, put it both in there for the first name and for the last name. All right, save this, run the program again. I just want you to see and verify indeed that what is put in there are our advanced, or I should say our custom-made error messages. Now, they used error message. I may have used error, so this may not work. Let's go back and look. Nope, I used error message, good. So again, we go to order create. Again, that's not going to kick in now. This is just the built-in one. Notice if I put in just a Q. See how it's got my custom error message in there now? All right. I should, though, be able to go back here, and it even showed it in there. I should be able to say required. Oh, then I have to put it in parens. So let's try that. All right. So you must input a first name, and we'll add here, you must input a last name. Be careful if you're doing a lot of copying and pasting, because if I didn't change this to last name, it would come back either way, and it would say you must enter a first name. Very common mistake. We all make it. So now when I go to order create and I immediately try to send this, I get my customized error message. Notice you must input a first name, you must input a last name, where later it said the first name field is required and the last name field is required. Okay? All right, let's stop right here. We are at 22 minutes just about. We will be after I get done. And we will pick it up when we come back. So we just did the custom error messages and localization. I didn't really talk localization, but you can do that. So for instance, if you want to make sure your currency is in the format for the country you're in, etc., you can do things like that. Okay? When I come back in just a couple minutes, as it says here, we're going to look beyond or behind the annotation chain to see what's kind of happening under the hood, so to speak. Be back with that in just a couple minutes.